Well, g'day there, my name is Jason Greenlees. I've been a web developer for about 25 years. And in that time, I've moved a lot of customer websites over from Squarespace to WordPress. And you might be thinking there that, well, isn't Squarespace the next best thing? It's a no-code editor. And it's where we really want to go with being able to self-manage our sites. Well, that might be the marketing truth or it might be the marketing lie, but I have seen more times than not, most of those Squarespace do-it-yourself type startup websites get to a point where they can't continue any further with what they want to do, and then they have to make the choice of whether they abandon all the work they've done and start again from scratch with a WordPress site, or they can start from scratch early. Now, I offer the Squarespace and Wix conversion service, which essentially takes what you've got at the moment on Squarespace and Wix and it moves it over to a WordPress platform. All of a sudden, you own that site. All of a sudden, you have AI capabilities that are far beyond that of Squarespace and Wix. And so today, I just wanted to go through very quickly on why your do-it-yourself website is costing you business. Now, I realize that it may not be you who's built the website. It might be your cousin, your brother, it could be a relative. And I'm not here to sort of dish their work or say that they've done a bad job. It may even be another web designer who's done the project for you for a cost that might even be fairly similar to if you had got it done on WordPress in the first place. That for me is the disappointment. That for me is someone who hasn't got the skills, who is trading themselves off as a web designer and selling something that could take them a couple of nights to build on Squarespace and not really giving the results at the end of it. Okay, so something that looks pretty and something that looks really nice doesn't always perform well. And I've found that over the time that without thorough strategy and planning, which usually goes hand in hand with a lot of the WordPress sites, versus picking a template off the shelf with Squarespace, you're kind of in better hands from the start if your developer and designer uses a WordPress platform. Anyway, let's move through these fairly quickly. The idea was this was going to be a very short sort of rundown on why you might want to move across from Squarespace and Wix. So Squarespace looks cheap, but it actually adds up and becomes quite expensive quite quickly. In fact, it is just as expensive as running your own sort of site. So there isn't a time saver or a cost saver there, unfortunately. So time is money, and basically, trying to do design, copywriting, all that side of things yourself is never a good idea. So, if you can outsource those sort of things to people that work with it all day, every day, then I just think it's a much better idea. With a lot of Squarespace sites, you just see them straight away, they're a template. They just have this thing about them where it's just an amateur first impression. Like I can pick a Squarespace site a mile away. And lastly, there are hidden transaction and e-commerce fees as well that usually Squarespace aren't upfront with. One of which is, basically just be aware if you are moving off Squarespace and you've just paid for a full year's worth, you've only got 14 days to cancel that, okay? So if you cancel after that period, they basically will keep your money regardless. So that's just one of the many things here. So easy tools that make mediocre results easy. So because Squarespace is a basic do-it-yourself drag and drop editor, they've cut down the customization and the capability there. So we can't do what we would want to do with normal templates within like a WordPress environment, and we can't scale using a proper template easily. So often we, as designers and developers, if we pick up Squarespace, we find that it's more time consuming to make edits because the design system that sits underneath the hood isn't always easy to update and maintain. We might be able to switch out colors and fonts and a couple of other little things really easily, but when you want to make some finer tuned changes, you actually have to jump into a code editor to do that, and it actually becomes more difficult than if it was on WordPress. I've seen a bunch of websites that we have switched them across because of the amount of additional time taken with these no code editors to make changes. So we're lacking SEO control, and look, Squarespace have pushed the whole SEO bandwagon for a long time, now trying to say they're just as good as everybody else. Their time to first byte, and this is one of many, many different factors, still doesn't even come close to if you were hosting a website down the road compared to hosting it in America. So I would avoid them for that reason as well. And they're reasons that you kind of don't know as a customer. As a customer, you go, oh, that looks really pretty. That's really nice. That's how it looks, especially after the first time it loads on your device. You're like, well, it loads really quickly too. Well, of course it does. It's all cached on your computer. So basically, one of the things that's missing from my list here is that core deep AI enablement that we now have with WordPress sites. While Squarespace has AI, it's kind of a bolt-on, right? It's kind of added to here and it's added to there, add images that are AI, add text that's AI, but it's actually not part of the core of the system. They're just kind of bolting it on the side to tick that box to say they've got AI. So, that being the future of, web development, I think, WordPress is in a much better place moving forward. Okay, so I put this together, the game you're losing on Wix. So 75% of all users never scroll past page 1 of Google. So this isn't a specific stat for Wix, but yeah, if your site doesn't perform though, and it may not perform because it is on a Wix platform and because it's slow or because it's missing structured data schema, it's you've uploaded an image that's like 10 times the size it should be and don't really understand about image sizes, you couldn't be on page 3. And honestly, it's a waste of time if you're not on page 1. So keep that in mind, page 1 or nothing. Your site is your biggest digital asset, and it's something that sort of runs 24/7, okay? So you don't want to rent it, you don't want to actually be at the mercy of a big business. You want to own that site. You want to be able to actually improve its capabilities over time. And you control the hosting. If you don't like Squarespace and you want to move off to another Squarespace there, you can't do that, okay? You can do that with a WordPress site. If you run into problems with your provider, then you can move that site wherever you want and get the best value for money, okay? So you're not being held hostage by these systems. One thing that I've actually found fairly recently as well is that and I don't think it was Squarespace or Wix, but some of these self-built platforms that are kind of locking customers in are actually stopping crawlers from scraping those sites as well, meaning that you can't easily replicate what they've built. And so the ownership over what's built is held to that system rather than actually being given over to the owner. So you can't necessarily think you own what you have. You're kind of renting it, I guess, and this is kind of the point of this. So saving money, that's costing you money. So monthly platform fee is $25 to $65 per month for a Squarespace or Wix platform. With a WordPress hosting platform, it's usually on par. 15 to 25 is super cheap. In terms of hosting, I would say it's probably closer to around that $60 mark as well, which of course isn't that top end of the Wix. But what's included within my hosting and is a whole bunch of other bells and whistles as well, which you just don't get with some SEO tools and that sort of thing, some other sort of software subscriptions. So I package everything up myself. So your time and your investment, is priceless. And so 10 to 30 hours setup and ongoings, I would say it's more like 60 hours setup and ongoings is kind of where your cost sits. So again, that's kind of half of what it needs to be. But if you outsource it, your investment, your time, yes, we do handle it, but there is a time investment in terms of a few meetings and that sort of thing to keep us on the right track, maybe a photo shoot, that sort of thing. SEO capability, look, basic, lockdown, you've got to wait for them to sort of catch up with, any other SEO improvements in the industry. And as we know, Google drops updates like all the time. Like today's the 28th of May. On the 21st of May, there was a massive update that went out just recently that, absolutely crippled a whole bunch of different websites. And so, still got to wait for those updates to come through from Squarespace and Wix to deal with that sort of thing. So with an outsourced WordPress site, you can jump on it straight away and get stuff happening. Design flexibility, okay? So often these templates are locked. With WordPress sites, I custom build everything from the ground up, okay? So I use builders like Bricks Builder or Etch or Oxygen or Breakdance. Any of those are really great builders, and they can all plug into design systems. And most importantly, those design systems will provide you consistency with spacing, with fonts, with colors, with sizing, with layout. It's just truly a game changer. Whereas, with templates that are locked, you're pretty much having to figure out what the padding or the spacing or the sizing was on other elements. Now, there is an element there of inheritance that comes down with any sort of style sheet. If you're a web designer, you know that. But with variables and tokens used within a properly designed design system where we're talking about stuff that goes across different platforms as well and changing sizes depending on, whether you're on mobile or not. So 3-year total estimate. We're really talking about a lot more money here than if you were to outsource your WordPress site. In fact, most of the time, beyond that one-off cost that you'll have with me to look after your WordPress site and your licensing and that sort of thing, you really don't have a lot of other sort of update costs that sort of come through unless you need SEO improvements or you need capability enhancements or we need to build a plugin for you that's custom. So visitors form an opinion in less than 0.05 seconds. Wow, that is huge. 94% of first impressions are design related. A template everyone has seen before tells customers you haven't invested anything in your business, so why should they? So, and you see this through stock imagery as well that is often used a lot on basic do-it-yourself type websites, or just not replaced from the template really. So mobile experience matters, and over 60% of web traffic is mobile, so more than the majority of website traffic is mobile. So do-it-yourself builders, for do-it-yourself builders like family-run businesses, do not consider how their change may impact other devices. They just don't, okay? They make the change, it looks great on the screen, and then they save it and they're off to, flip burgers or, whatever they do, okay? This is the problem with, a do-it-yourself type site. There are considerations there that a professional is going to pick up and they're going to make adjustments for that. And I've seen a bunch of websites that have been made by Squarespace professionals who haven't done the right thing by mobile first. And I've picked that up, and they've been built for councils and that sort of thing. Okay, so page speed and signals and trust. So there's just a lot more capability in terms of reaching out with different, sites. And the page speed, as I mentioned before, you're never going to beat a WordPress site versus a, the slower Squarespace or Wix website. So consistency everywhere, touch points, for your website is just distribution of content, like social media. Like you can just do so much more. The list is endless. So you don't know what you don't know, and that's exactly what Google exploits. Okay, so no SEO knowledge. So if you do it yourself, you don't know what a meta tag is, you don't know what a meta title is, you don't know what schema is, you don't know that you need to optimize your images, you don't know that you need alt tags on those images, you don't know anything about putting seeded SEO keywords into titles, into H1s. There are hundreds of factors here, right? And yet these tools are being given to people to pick up and try to figure out themselves. And they're trying to automate as much of these sort of red things as possible. But at the end of the day, it's your content, your copywriting skills, and your images that you're uploading, okay? So yes, there are some things that it's making easier, but in the same way, it's taking away those things that actually add value to, the website. So don't fall to the trap of something that's easy and flashy. With that comes, restrictions, unfortunately. So the world's most trusted CMS is WordPress. It's plain and simple. 43% of the website, the internet's traffic is, 43% of websites that run globally run on WordPress. So I have come back from a background where I've actually built websites on other platforms as well. Definitely not Squarespace and Wix, although I did have a bit of a tinker there for a little while and then quickly realized my mistake. But yeah, there is a large portion of the internet that's running WordPress. And WooCommerce is basically the e-commerce component set inside WordPress. So 60,000 plugins are available. 60,000. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. And now with AI, you can build those plugins yourself as well. So, but you need that in-depth experience and knowledge on how to do that stuff. The questions you need to feed into AI to get the results you're after aren't as simple as just saying, I need a website for my electrician business. There's 100 different questions that need to come after that mean you need a depth of experience and knowledge that's set in there first to form a solid strategy. Okay, so let's just not get sort of stuck, but yeah, some of the major websites in the world, NASA, TechCrunch, White House, Sony, they all run WordPress sites, okay? Automatic is the organization behind WordPress, and we also have some pretty amazing integration capabilities with APIs that aren't found elsewhere, and you can only dream about it on do-it-yourself type sites. So it's backed by trusted, 20 years of professional development, So my recommendation is stop letting a do-it-yourself site cost you money and get leads or get us to build a professional, conversion-focused, strategy-led WordPress site, okay, for your regional business. We can have a chat, 30 minutes is all it'll take, and you can figure out whether, we're the right choice for you. Anyway, thanks so much for your time. This has gone a little bit over time, but I think it's been valuable in trying to sort of point out some of those things that often, people get trapped, especially when they're not really told the entire truth when it comes to running a do-it-yourself type site. and the marketing is just, amazing. You know, what's out there telling us that anyone can do it, and anyone should be able to do it, because, you know, everyone can do everything, right? I can be a cementer, I can be a plumber, I can be an electrician, you know, but I can't. At the end of the day, I need to have those skills. So, look forward to hearing from you.